Introduction to Human Resource Planning System, the Emerging Context. Unit 1. Objectives. After going through this unit, you'll be able to understand various approaches to human resource planning and important trends that will affect organizations, employees, and job applicants. Realize the importance of human resource planning in current organizational scenario. Understand the HRP process and the impact of external and internal issues on HRP process, and appreciate the dynamics of various forecasting techniques. Introduction. Planning the right man for the job and developing him into effective team member is an important function of every manager. It is because HR is an important corporate asset and performance of organizations depends upon the way it is put in use. HRP is a deliberate strategy for acquisition, improvement, and preservation of enterprises' human resources. It is a managerial function aimed at coordinating the requirements for and availability of different types of employees. This involves ensuring that the organization has enough of right kind of people at right time, and also adjusting the requirements to the available supply. Basics of human resource planning. HRP is a forward-looking function and an organizational tool to identify skill and competency gaps and subsequently develop plans for development of deficient skills and competencies in human resources to remain competitive. HRP is influenced by technological changes and other global business compulsions. HRP ensures benefits to the organizations by creating a reservoir of talent, preparing people for future cost-cutting and succession planning, besides creating a backup plan in case of diversification and expansion. Human resource planning should be an integral part of business planning. The planning process defines projected changes in the types of activities carried out by the organization and the scale of those activities. It identifies the core competencies required by the organization to achieve its goals. Human resource planning interprets people's requirements in terms of stalls and competencies. As Quinn Mills indicates, human resource planning is a decision-making process that combines three important activities: identifying and acquiring the right number of people with the proper skills. 2. Motivating them to achieve high performance. 3. Creating interactive links between business objectives and resource planning activities. Human resource planning is indeed concerned with broader issues about the employment of people than the traditional quantitative model approach of manpower planning, but it specifically focuses on those aspects of human resource management that are primarily about the organization's requirements for people from the viewpoint of numbers, skills, and how they are deployed. However, it must be recognized that although the notion of human resource planning is well established in the HRM vocabulary, it does not seem to be established as key human resource activity. 1.2. Why is human resource planning important? Human resource planning is important for helping both organization and employees to prepare for the future But you might be thinking, are not things always changing? For example, a few years ago, the legal profession seemed to be a good field, but it is now very crowded. So what is the value of planning? The answer is that even an imperfect forecast of the future can be quite helpful. Consider weather forecast. You can probably think of occasions when it snowed, even though the television weather forecaster predicted there would be no snow. Conversely, you can probably think of times when it did not snow, even though the weather forecaster predicted a foot of snow by the next morning. You may be surprised to learn that as inaccurate as weather forecasts sometimes seem to be, many organizations pay for forecasting services for regular weather updates. The reason for this is quite simple. Even Even a production that is sometimes wrong is better than no forecast or production at all. Perhaps the best example is the stock market. If someone had even a fairly accurate way to predict which stocks would go up and which stocks would go down, that person can make a great deal of money investing in the stock market, even though there would be some mistakes. The key is whether one's prediction tool improves the chances of making the right decisions, even though the predictive tool may not always be accurate. As long as it is more accurate than random guessing, it will result in better decisions. The same point applies to human resource planning. Even though neither organizations nor employees can look into the future, making predictions can be quite helpful, even if they are not always accurate. The basic goal of human resource planning, then, is to predict the future and, based on these predictions, implement programs to avoid anticipated problems. Very briefly, human resource planning is the process of examining an organization or individual's future human resource needs. For instance, what type of skills will be needed for jobs of the future compared to future human resource capabilities, such as the type of skills employees or you already have, and developing human resource policies and practices to address potential problems, for example, implementing training programs to avoid skill deficiencies. 1.3. Meaning and definition of HRP. In simple words, HRP is understood as the process of forecasting an organization's future human resource demand for and supply to meet the objectives, such as the right type of people in the right number. After this process, only the HRM department can initiate recruitment and selection process. HRP is a subsystem in the total organizational planning. Organizational planning includes managerial activities that set the company's objectives for the future and determines appropriate means for achieving those objectives. HRP facilitates the realization of the company's objectives for the future and determines appropriate means for achieving those objectives. HRP also facilitates the realization of the company's objectives by providing the right type of and the right number of personnel. HRP is variously called manpower planning, personnel planning, and employment planning. Human resource planning is a process by which an organization ensures that it has the right number of and kind of people at the right place, at the right time, capable effectively and efficiently completing tasks that will help the organization achieve its overall objective. Human resource planning then translates the organization's objectives and plans into the number of workers needed to meet those objectives. Without a clear-cutting plan, estimation of human resource need is reduced to mere guesswork. 1.4. Need for planning. The need for planning arises mostly due to the fact that modern organizations have to survive, operate, and grow in highly competitive market economics where change is the order of the day. The change may be either revolutionary, sudden, or evolutionary, slow. The different areas of change include change in technology, change in population, change in economic structures and systems, change in policies of government, change in employee attitudes, behavior, etc. These changes create problems for the management through threats and challenges. Managers have to bear the problems caused due to the changes and act upon them tactfully in order to avoid or reduce the effects of these problems on the survival, operation, and growth of the organization. Efficient managers can foresee the problems likely to occur and try to prevent them. As pointed by Terry, successful managers deal with foreseen problems and unsuccessful managers struggle with unforeseen problems. The difference lies in planning. Managers have to foresee to make the future favorable to the organization in order to achieve the goals effectively. They introduce action, overcome current problems, prevent future uncertainties, adjust the goals with the unforeseen environmental conditions, and exert all their resources to achieve their goals. According to Megginson et al., to have an organization that looks forward to the future and tries to stay alive and prosper in a changing world, there must be active, vigorous, continuous, and creative planning. Thus, There is a greater need for planning in order to keep the organization dynamic in the changing situation of uncertainty. Basics of human resource planning. More specifically, HRP is required to meet the following objectives. Number 1, forecast HR requirement. 2, cope up with the change in market conditions, technologies, products, government regulations, and policies. 3, use existing HR productivity. 4, promote employees in a systematic manner. If used properly, it offers a number of benefits. 1, create a reservoir of talent. 2, prepares people for a future. 3, expand or contract. 4, cut costs. 5, succession planning. 1.5, the types of plans. There are 9 types of plans, such as philosophy, purpose, objectives, strategies, policies, procedures, and rules, programs, and budgets. Now we shall discuss brief each of these types of plans. Number 1, philosophy. The organization's role that they wish to play in society in terms of philosophy. The philosophy of the company should have clarity of thought and action in the accomplishment of economic objectives of a country. The philosophy bridges the gap between society and the company. Purpose. Every kind of organized group activities or operations has a purpose. For example, the purpose of a bank is to accept deposits and grant loans and advances. 3. Objectives. Objectives are the ends towards which organizational activity is aimed. Every department has its own objectives, which may not be completely same as the other department or organization. 4. Strategies. Strategy is determination of the basic long-term objectives of an enterprise and the adoption of courses of action and allocation of resources necessary to achieve these goals. 5. Policies. Policies are general statements or understandings which guide or direct thinking and action in decision-making. However, all policies are not statements. 6. Procedures and rules. Procedures are plans that establish a desired method of handling future activities. They detail the exact manner in which a certain activity must be accomplished. 7. Programs. These are complexes of goals, policies, procedures, task assignments, rules, steps to be taken, or sources to be employed, and other elements necessary to carry out a given course of action. 8. Budget. A budget is a statement of expected results in terms of members. It may be referred to as a numerical program. Cash budget, sales budget, capital expenditure budget are some of the examples of budgets.